Hey, this is Bruce Boudreau, and you're listening to Empty Betters with Nick, Mac, and Harrison.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to episode 177 of Empty Betters. I am your host, Harrison Scholes. I'm going to toss it across the screen to my co-host, Nick Manella. What's going on, my friend?
Dude, I am exhausted. Just helped my younger brother move all day. Can't feel my back, can't feel my knees, but we got a couple of these, so I'm real happy now.
Mountains are blue, eh?
Hell yeah.
Amen. Well, it's summertime, first summer pod of the season, so definitely a good time to be cracking them. Going to toss it across the screen to my other co-host up in Wisconsin, Mr. Mac Vogel. What's going on, my friend?
Life is good in the good land. We've got Summerfest going on. We've got finally some good weather besides all the smoke from Canada, but that's a whole other problem. I'm actually, speaking of drinks, I'm drinking a little summer bevy that I've been enjoying. I'm calling it the Dirty Arnie. It's like one of them spiked Arnold Palmers. Delish.
The Dirty Arnie. I love that.
That's so much better than having to say the full name, which puts my tongue into an absolute pretzel
Arnold
every time.
Palmer spiked.
Yeah.
is what it's labeled as. But yeah, Dirty Arnie, baby. Let's go.
I like that.
Love it. And lastly, but definitely what's the saying? I'm drawing a blank.
Last but not least,
Mr. Jackson Gross with the all-time best background on a Zoom call I've ever seen. If you're not watching on YouTube, you should be. Jackson, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. We'll get into the next greatest hockey player of all time in a few minutes. He's now part of my franchise, so I love it. But doing pretty good. Just sucks being stuck inside for the most part with all the smoke from Canada. Haven't been able to go on a run in a few days, but we'll get through it.
it's weird. You know, we talk about smoke from Canada. It's like you think it would be coming from Vancouver, but it's not.
Good one, Nick.
LOL. Nice.
Yeah, like that one. Maybe there'll be some smoke after July 1 coming up here shortly with some free agency chat. We got a lot to talk about. NHL Draft, NHL awards, free agency on the horizon, some trades and signings. So a jam-packed episode. Before we get started here, I'm actually going to toss it across to Nick for the question of the day today. We're switching it up a little bit.
Real simple. Would you rather for you boys? So I was thinking about this while my body was deteriorating on the drive home from Baltimore after the move, but would you rather never have to move again or never be hungover again?
Ooh.
Wow. That's a good one. I'm going to ask a qualifying question right away. When you say never have to move again, can I still change the location of where I live? I just don't have to do any of the work.
You don't have to do it. Like everything like that's set up in your house is sort of set up that way when you get to your new place, or set up the way you would want it to be set up.
So it'd just be like, hey, I need to be in this other location by this day, and it just kind of magically happens. And
it's like you go occupy yourself for a day, and like by the time it's like 5 p.m. you can go to the new place. TV's hooked up, internet's hooked up. You don't have to run cables or anything. It's done.
Is it free?
Yep, full service.
That's damn good. That is damn good.
That is damn good.
But that being said, realistically, how many times are you going to move in your life? I mean, a lot when like, you're in college and shit, but I'm out of college now. So, I mean, hopefully not that many more times.
And like your college moves are typically, especially if you're like Harry and I who lived in like a college town, you know, your move is like 5 minutes to 15 minutes max.
And usually you don't have too much shit. I mean, you've got a bunch of like stupid shit, but you don't have like
someone's got a couch, someone's got a TV.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Mm-hmm. It's like smaller stuff. So I don't know. I mean, that is super appealing, but I'm saying like maximum I get to use that benefit, I don't know, a dozen times. Like I can't imagine I'm gonna move more than a dozen more times for the rest of my life.
Really, that's a lot. Yeah.
I mean,
I hope
I'm
not.
being generous. I'm being
Yeah.
generous here, but
Yeah.
versus I can, I think I can guarantee you, boys, I will be hungover more than a dozen more times
This
in my
year.
life. This year, this month,
Before the end of the summer.
29th. I don't know how that
It's
works.
also
but-
Summerfest for Max, so it could be this week, but
Right. That's tough. But the other part of this equation is I'm built different. So like I just don't get that hungover because
there you
I'm
go.
25 and I'm
Give it 2
spry,
years, my
you know?
friend.
So that's why I'm like, I feel like I know what Nick is gonna say here, but
Harry, which way are you leaning?
Oh, no hangover. Hangovers crush me now. I used to think I was like cool and built different, and then
Okay.
it's just downhill. It's downhill. It really is. And plus, like Max said, I'll probably end up being hungover, hundreds of times before I die. I might move
Yeah.
maybe like 3 or 4. So for me, I'm definitely gonna choose the hangover.
what's
Jay,
dope
how about
about
yourself?
this? One quick comment. What's dope about this is it guarantees, no matter which one you pick, it guarantees you will never have to move hungover.
That
Yes.
which sucks.
Which is
for anyone out
horrible.
there who's done it.
Oh my God. I'm probably leaning the moving stuff because you gotta think about it. Hangovers last like a couple of days or whatever typically.
Maximum, yeah.
But if you think about it with just like how much you're gonna bang up your body by moving, and then all the mental stress you're gonna have to do with setting up internet, setting up cable,
It is a
putting
pain in the
TVs,
ass.
couches, and
Yeah.
all that other stuff away, I'd rather not have to deal with that and then try and deal with maybe like a day or two of feeling like shit.
I also think there's something to be said about the fact that like a hangover is it's kind of good for you in a way because it kind of
Yes.
reminds you that you can't
Yes.
like be doing that and like
I guess it could be like a gateway drug to alcohol.
yeah, like if
like
I never
if
got
we didn't have
hungover, what if I'm just
hangovers?
like, oh fuck, I'm gonna like binge drink every fucking day.
like vodka
Like,
becomes Gatorade at that
yeah,
point.
exactly.
What's wrong with that?
Right. Well,
Hey,
I know
um,
people who do that and they still get hangovers.
True.
I think I've
All
said
right.
this before, but there's an awesome restaurant here that I've actually taken you guys to, where Miller Lite is on the menu and the description says the Gatorade of beers.
Yep.
I do love
That's
that.
very true. I'm going
Yeah.
to walk you guys through my school of thought with this one. I had a lot of time to think about this on the drive home. And I'm going to agree with Jay. I'm going to take never move again. Like moving yourself is one thing. Imagine if you have like kids and you have to
Oh.
move,
Oh,
or like you've got 3 kids and a dog.
oh my God.
And you have to
Yeah.
deal with like packing up all your crap, then all their crap. Then they get there, they're uncomfortable. They don't know where their shit is. They're
At
crying.
what point do you move the dog? Do you do
Right.
it first? Do you do it last? And how? Yeah, that's
Yeah, it's rough.
Right, the door's open while you're moving furniture, so the dog's
dog
running in and
runs
out of the
out. Yeah.
house.
Oh,
Like it's just a
God,
nightmare.
man.
That
All
is
right, I'm
brutal.
sold. I'm
That
taking
combined
moving.
with the like I feel like if we didn't have hangovers, it would be like a bottle of whiskey a night. Like not to sound bad, but
the more I'm thinking about it, the more that I'm like, that is a dangerous superpower.
it's
I'm
a
not
good
doing that.
accountability buddy. Let's put it that way.
Yes. Yeah. There we go.
Accountability. I like that.
All right. I think we're all in unison here.
yeah.
Yeah.
Move.
Harry, are you
Move.
still sticking with
I'm
hangovers?
sticking hangover. Yeah.
Okay.
Fuck it. If
I
that's
am-
the case, I'll move once a year for the rest of my life.
I mean, it's
like,
not a bad gig.
change of
especially if
scenery
it's-
is always nice.
To never
it's
have
free.
to like attempt to like break my back going behind the TV to get like an HDMI cable into the
Oh.
cable box or like feed
Yeah.
it through the TV stand. That alone is enough for me to choose that.
Yep. I'm with you.
Do you know how many weddings and bachelor parties are in my next 5 years of life? If I can
Buckle
never
up.
be hungover, that is
Yeah.
that is a win. So I
Bachelor
will-
parties, you don't even have a choice. It's just like
Yeah.
what
Oh.
degree of hungover am I gonna be?
I just had one this past weekend, boys. So
Yeah, I'll stick to my guns. But that's a great QOTD. I enjoyed that one. This is just a reminder that question of the day was brought to you by Brackish Life. If you're like us and grew up on the water and outdoors, then Brackish Life is perfect for you. They have a wide selection of gear from UV shirts to hoodies and hats. It is Real Bay apparel made by Real Bay people. Head to www.brackish.life today to check them out. A little salty, a little fresh, Brackish Life. All right. Let's start with the NHL draft. So obviously Connor Bedard, the big story going into this one. He definitely was the unanimous first overall pick. Going into this, everybody knew it. So the Chicago Blackhawks take him number 1. He is supposed to be the next Connor McDavid, as some would say. Jackson, I definitely want to hear your immediate reaction to this. And, you're tapped into the Blackhawks social media game. What was the buzz like?
Everyone was absolutely buzzing. I was glad I was able to catch him being drafted right on my phone. It did throw me for a loop for a second that the GMs are the ones who announce the picks, because in every other league it's like the commissioner or like assistant commissioner or whatever. So once I got past that, it was just cool to see like just how much hype was going into this. There was a watch party in Chicago. I wasn't able to go, but there was like fireworks or like confetti after he got drafted and all that kind of stuff. So there's a reinvigoration of hockey love in Chicago going on right now, considering where the two baseball teams are
That was good. Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about this a little later in the episode, but the Blackhawks, they get this generational talent. He's 17 years old, I think, as of this moment. Turns 18
he's still
next
not
month.
18.
Yeah, he's not even like legal to buy tobacco, and
he can't drink in Canada.
And he's got a original 6 franchise putting all their trust into him, which is just crazy to think about. But real quick, what do you guys think about Bedard this coming season alone? Like, do you think he's going to put up 100 points as a rookie?
It's hard to say. I feel like I'm so used to these like super highly touted first overall picks, like being as highly touted as they are and then showing up, and we kind of have to lower the bar a little bit, at least for the first year or two. And I know this is kind of a different situation because we haven't had somebody with like this much hype around them in forever, maybe ever, honestly. But I would say like he'll be in that range. I'd say like 80 plus points feels right to me. Like I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
I think, Mac, you talk about not having this much hype. There's 2 players that I think of when you think about this much hype, and that's Sid and Ovi. And I skip over McDavid because, yes, he had hype about him, but I feel like he actually grew into so much more than what we were expecting, especially because of those early struggles. The first couple seasons, he had the broken leg. The Oilers weren't really great. They were in and out of the playoffs. This guy, I don't know if he's going to go out and put up 100 points, but you look at someone like Jack Hughes, who came in at 18, struggled a lot in his first season. Everyone was throwing around bust on social media, and then he absolutely lights it up and gets 40 tucks in his sophomore season. So I think we could see something like that. I think a lot of that comes down to what do the Blackhawks do around him. They're obviously making some moves now that we'll touch on in a little bit. They brought in NHL superstar Josh Bailey, so that's great.
And immediately bought him out.
He was too good for the team.
Yeah, I think the thing that sets Bedard apart from maybe guys like Hughes or, I don't know, name some other first overall picks in the last couple of years, my brain's fried, but is the shot. The shot is at 17 years old, probably in the top 10 in the NHL. And I would go ahead and say top 5.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Did you guys see Kevin Weeks, who, by the way, did a phenomenal job on the coverage there? He asked him what flex he's using on his stick, and he's using a 70.
Yeah.
That's like there's 13-year-olds
for reference.
It's like some U16 shit or something.
For reference, OV uses like 110.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a whippy ass stick. It's a long stick too. He uses kind of a longer twig, but yeah. Bedard goes number 1 to the Hawks. Cool moment for their franchise. It's going to be a really exciting rookie season for him, and they just so happen to open up their season against my Pittsburgh Penguins at PPG Paints. And Bedard's favorite player growing up was Sid, and he gets to face off against him. That's going to be pretty cool.
Wow, the NHL gets to put their 2 babies in a little manger together.
I'm not complaining. It's gonna be great.
Neither am I. I'm down for it.
Yeah,
it's like if you had the Habs and the Leafs in there, like Bettman would just be absolutely putting dots on his ceiling.
And then a little controversy in the draft. So it was I want to say pretty widely agreed on that Adam Fantilli was probably going to go number 2, but then last second you hear some rumors that maybe Leo Carlsson, maybe Will Smith will work their way up to number 2, and the Ducks end up taking Leo Carlsson at number 2, which eventually leads to Adam Fantilli becoming a Columbus Blue Jacket at number 3. What were your thoughts on how picks 2 and 3 shook out?
Well, of course, Fance ends up in the Metro. I mean, just right off the bat, go ahead, why not? The concept of Gaudreau, Line A, and now Fantilli is you got to be excited if you're a Jackets fan. And honestly, like, I mean, that team has struggled for so long. I know they're in division for all of us minus Jay, but it's kind of cool to see them get like a A1 talent like that. I actually really like Leo Carlsson for the Ducks, though.
I feel like they're like a Swedish team. Like they always go for those Euros.
They love their Swedes. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And like the comparisons with Carlsson, you know, he's got the size and still has all the skill. So the comparisons to the two-way game of Barkov and the offensive upside of Jason Spezza are there, and that's hard to ignore.
Yeah, no, that's some great company to be compared to. And then you look at Fantilli, a lot of people use Jonathan Taves, maybe Logan Couture as a guy that he could resemble. So CBJ is definitely going to get their probably number 1 center down the road.
And I think he's got a touch more goal scoring and sort of like finish ability than those guys do. I mean, Taves was nasty, but his shot wasn't his biggest weapon, let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So 2 and 3 shook out that way. And then Will Smith goes number 4 to San Jose. I know there were a lot of people talking about him because he was the highest scoring player, I believe I can't remember what it was like under 18 scoring, but the league is escaping me. But Bedard was the only guy above him. Will Smith was second. So some people were saying maybe he would go second, but he ends up going to San Jose. So good for them. Not going to go through all of these, but definitely the biggest talk of the top 10 is Michkov, the Russian kid, goes to the Philadelphia Flyers at number 7. A lot of people are saying in any other draft, and if you take away his contract situation in Russia, he's an easy number 1 overall pick.
When you get compared to Pavel Datsyuk and Nikita Kucherov,
yeah,
I mean, it's hard not to.
Yeah. I mean, you name it, that there's been all kinds of comparisons. There's been people saying he's the best Russian since Ovechkin available in the draft. I know there was tons of rumors that the Caps had their eyes on him. And there was a lot of rumors that Philly was like specifically going to take him, like, so the Caps couldn't get him. There was speculation leading up to it that the Caps might try and trade up. And then there was like, oh, are they going to try and call their bluff? Like, what if Philly actually wants somebody else? And, you know, it seemed to be one thing for sure. The price of trading up in this draft was high. It was
so high. Like, it was almost not worth it.
Yeah. And I think everybody kind of realized that and decided on it, because as we have in the notes here, for the first time since 2007, the NHL draft had no trades in the first round. That comes to us from Frank Saravalli. So yeah, I mean, it was interesting. Caps basically called their bluff, said you won't take him, and Flyers did. That's the way it shook out. He is on KHL contract, as Harrison mentioned, for I believe 3 more years. So unless he finds a way to get out of that, which some guys have, it's possible he can get out early, but for now, that's how long he's going to be there minimum. So for that reason, I'm kind of okay with the Caps not getting him, just because the Caps kind of need to be good like now or like maybe next year. And with our pick, Ryan Leonard, I feel like there's a chance maybe he could see some NHL time by like next season or something like that. So we'll see how that all shakes out. But all things considered, I'm pretty okay with the pick that the Caps ended up taking. I think a lot of people called him like a Tom Wilson light Ryan Leonard, which is, I mean, that's a pretty good comparison for me. I'm cool with that.
I think the last thing I'll say about Michkov is the Flyers are in total rebuild mode. They are blowing that thing up, and they're going to do it right. I think the people they've brought in, I think Daniel Briere is already doing a fantastic job. I loved his interview with Emily Kaplan following that pick. Yeah. I know it did come out or get leaked on the internet that basically Michkov had like 2 meetings prior to the draft with the Flyers that went fantastically well. I heard he was pretty much telling other teams like, I'm not going to play there. So I think
Right.
that's something that is absolutely going to be a problem for anyone that's a fan of a Metro team in Mac, like you said, 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. And then you guys get Ryan Leonard, as Mac already alluded to. Nick, do you have any thoughts that Mac didn't say?
The diet Tom Wilson or Tom Wilson light thing is probably a good way to explain this to Caps fans. I think there's a lot more skill set there in terms of like nose for the net and stick handling kind of stuff. The comparisons to the Kachuk brothers is fantastic. I think Caps fans kind of have to be over the moon with this one. There's
You
a
can
couple
almost see it in
guys.
his face. He's like he's like a gritty guy. Like you can tell. He even said it like when I like when they ask guys like describe your like skill set, like what do you bring to the table, and he said something like yeah, I'm kind of gritty. I'm not afraid to like get
Mix it up.
physical and stuff like that. Yeah.
And I think that's sort of become an underlying theme in DC that no one really talks about for the past 4 or 5 years. But I think my favorite part about his interview with Emily Kaplan was she was like, you're going to get to play with Alex Ovechkin. And I thought like the dude was like Wile E. Coyote, like his eyes just jumped out of his head. So that was great to see.
Yeah, super cool. It was all in all, I would say it was a pretty good draft in terms of, being a viewer. The way ESPN broke it down was great. Butchie was awesome. Weeksy was awesome.
Carey Price was great.
Carey Price was great. I thought it was actually a decent covered draft, and apparently it shows because this comes to us from Puck Empire, who got it from John Butchiegross. The 2023 NHL Draft had 681,000 viewers on ESPN, which shattered the record of 457,000 in last year's draft.
And that follows one of the worst Stanley Cup final views of all time.
Yeah. So what you lost, I mean, obviously, it's not getting as many views as the Cup finals, but to set a record for that, I mean, that's pretty good for the league. I think they did a good job.
Definitely.
So yeah, that'll wrap up our draft coverage. We got a lot to talk about, so we can't touch on it too long. But we are going to move on to the NHL awards. Before we get to that, I just want to say, be on the lookout for the Empty Betters Awards. We're going to be doing that for the first time this season. That should be releasing in the near future.
The first annual, that is. Yep.
Yeah. First of many.
First annual. So be on the lookout for that. We'll be posted on social when that goes live. Going to touch on the big trophies, quote unquote, here. MVP, McDavid, duh. Ted Lindsay, the most outstanding player, McDavid, duh. Art Ross, leading scorer, McDavid, we already knew this, duh. And then most goals, the Rocket Richard, McDavid, duh. So first player since, I believe, Ovi in 07-08 to bring home the 4 major individual awards. That's pretty sick.
It is pretty sick. I feel like it's not getting talked about at all because we just went straight into the draft. And I feel like timing, shout out to the NHL marketing team again, putting the NHL awards in the middle of the week, right before the draft, which is also in the middle of the week. Just a fantastic job to alienate everyone from watching it.
That's still one of my favorite photos of Ovi, is the one where he's just holding all the hardware and he's like super young.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, McDavid literally just had the best season in the 21st century, so that's pretty insane. First guy since Mario to put up 150 points back in 96.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Norris, best defenseman. Erik Karlsson takes that one home. He got 100 points this season, which is pretty insane. We haven't seen that in a very long time.
Well deserved.
I agree.
Yeah.
Even though the Sharks didn't make the playoffs, I thought he was the best defenseman this year. To put up 100 points as a D-man is insane. So
he was what the Sharks wanted when they got Erik Karlsson.
Right, and now it's too late. Now they got to trade him, and that'll probably break as we are recording this, knowing our luck. The Vezina, best goalie, Linus Ullmark of the Boston Bruins. This is obviously regular season-based awards, so keep that in mind. The Calder, Rookie of the Year, Matty Beniers, no surprise there. And then the Selke Trophy, Patrice Bergeron once again. I think this is the 6th time he's won this trophy. He has won this award more than 30 other NHL franchises.
Insane. The Selke is such a like repeat offender award too. Like it went to Datsuk, then I think like it went to
Kopitar.
like then to Kopitar, then to Bergeron, then to Kopitar, then to Bergeron. I think Couturier had one in there like 3 years ago, but it's just so funny how this one goes.
Yeah. Those are pretty much all the big awards. I do want to Jack Adams, Coach of the Year, Jim Montgomery of the Bruins. And then I'm gonna give a shout out to Chris Letang. I love this one. The Bill Masterson trophy. It's basically like a perseverance trophy. The guy just had a stroke and his dad died all in the same season, and he had another injury too. So he's been down a dark road this season, but he was in an interview after he received the award, and he said, it was tough this season, but back to business as usual next season. So I definitely appreciate that human side of Chris, and he's a great guy, and we're lucky to have him.
Absolutely, and very well deserved. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Johnny the Rocket Carlson was up for this one as well. With all the injuries he had to go through this year, especially that head injury. But, it's hard to be mad at Chris Letang for winning this award. I think he absolutely deserves it.
100% agree with that. I think as we've talked about just everything he had to go through, it's like, and still do decently well considering everything that went on. I think he was an easy slam dunk for that.
Yeah. Yep. So that will wrap up the NHL awards. We are going to talk a little bit of AHL. I know the Hershey Bears just won their 12th Calder Cup in franchise history, which is the most in the AHL. Nick and Mac, what are your guys' thoughts on this?
What a game.
Sweeter by the dozen, baby.
Oh, yeah. Chocolate hockey. I mean, that whole series was an absolute treat to watch.
A game 7 overtime, and like the Bears were down 2-0 late in the second period, tied it, battled back, forced overtime. I mean, it was literally like a storybook, like Disney movie of a hockey game, basically. Is how I would explain it. But yeah, it was super fun watching it on TV while it was going on. I was going nuts in my living room as soon as they scored. So yeah, it was nice to have a little extra hockey there after the NHL season ended. Tip of the cap to all the Bears. And if you're a Caps fan, I mean, you got to love seeing a lot of the young guys like McMichael and LaPierre play a huge role. Hunter Shepherd as well. It's great seeing guys like that in a really big moment when your back's against the wall, battle back, tie the game, force overtime, win the championship. It's good stuff. Good experience.
I think, it's great to see Mac, like you mentioned, like McMichael and LaPierre, probably the two highest touted Washington Capitals prospects playing for the Bears, get huge goals in that game. But I don't think we can really, it's just like amazing the journey that Hunter Shepherd has been on. This is a guy who was playing in South Carolina 2 years ago and is now a Calder Cup champion and had one of the best playoffs for a goaltender in pro hockey we've seen in a very, very long time.
Calder Cup champion, and he won the playoff MVP as well.
Well deserved too.
Awesome stuff from the Bears, and congrats to our pal Zach Fucali. That's awesome.
Speaking of which, stay tuned.
That's all we'll say. All right, that'll wrap up our AHL coverage. Congrats to the Bears once again. These two teams, Calgary and Boston, just want to touch on this, even though it is rumor mill, but we'll report it in our news segment. There's going to be a lot of change potentially in those two organizations. For the Flames, Elias Lindholm, Michael Backlund, and Noah Hannafin have all said that they want out of town per Frank Saravelli. They are set to become UFAs on July 1. Should be interesting to see what Calgary can work out between now and then, if anything.
To Foley as well.
Well, he's already gone, but yes.
Yeah.
He said he was like, get me out of here.
Yeah, so we'll touch on that in a second. And then the Bruins, they're preparing under the assumption that Bergeron and Krejci will not be back next season. They're giving the two veterans some time and space to figure out how they want to handle next season. That would be a huge culture change in the Bruins locker room should those two not return.
So I got to ask odds maker Harry here, if you were going to bet on both of those players starting the first game of the season for the Bruins, what would you set the line at?
No, that's a good question. I like that one. I feel like for Bergeron, I'd give it like even money, like plus 100.
Spot on.
Krejci, plus 160. I feel like it might be a little less likely for him. I feel like he like was in he was in check, and then he was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. And then they had this unreal run, and he's like, this is kind of my chance. And then they obviously didn't get out of the first round, and I feel like he's like, fuck this, I'm done.
So maybe
We'll see.
like meet in the middle, like plus 120, 125 kind of thing.
I
If
don't
you
know.
did the two combined.
Yeah, I guess two
Okay.
combined. Yeah, I'd say that's probably what I would set it at. But should be interesting. I can't imagine Bergeron not coming back. I don't know why, but in my head, I'm like,
I
there's
totally
no way
agree.
that doesn't.
He's playing. He just won the
Yeah.
Selkie. He's playing.
And they just brought Lucic back too.
Right, like,
they
come
know
on.
what they're doing. They're like, look,
Yeah.
we got a treat for you. Here,
Yeah.
doggy,
It's
doggy.
like they would put Tom Brady in a Bruins jersey if they could.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Like,
anything to get the nostalgia factor and everybody's back into it. Yeah. And then before we get to the trades, just some cool little tidbits, that we that came over the news segment here. Some grow the game moments. Tennessee State became the first HCBU to offer college hockey after partnering with the Predators and the NHLPA. That's awesome. And then players from 15 different countries were drafted this year, which is absolutely nuts.
Including Mr. Manella. Do you know what I'm going to say here and why I'm singling you out?
My paisan.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
no way.
Yeah. We had a goaltender. The Ducks took a goaltender. His name is totally escaping me.
I think
but
I want to say Damian Clara or
Yes.
something like that.
Yep. So he's the first Italian-born and raised player to be drafted. Luca Spiza, the defenseman, was Italian-born but grew up in Switzerland and plays internationally for the Swiss. So glad to see that.
Yeah, super
He was
cool.
drafted like 60th overall too. It's not too
not
bad,
bad.
especially for a goalie. That's like
Right?
pretty solid.
Yeah.
And we're going to move on to the trades portion. There's been quite a few. I'm hoping we have all of these on here. If we miss one, apologies. And there's probably going to be one that comes over while we're doing this. So just bear with us here. But the big one, Winnipeg sends Pierre-Luc Dubois to LA for Gabe Vilardi, Alex Iafallo, and Rasmus Kupari, and a second in 2024. And then PLD signs 8 years at 8.5 AAV. That's a little over 68 million total.
I have a quick tidbit that I'll read off. I had to get the scoop from our boy Morgan Miller on all this. He, interestingly enough, was the most bummed to be losing Gabe Vilardi, and the least bummed to be losing Iafallo. He felt that Iafallo was the most replaceable, I guess, of the bunch. And he also noted that if he did his math right, he thinks that how all the like contracts are going to shake out, that should still leave the Kings with about 5 or 6 million to play with for goalie. So that's what he's worried about right now as a diehard Kings fan who's going to stop pucks.
I think this trade is it's a win-win. It's a solid A- for both teams. Let's put it that way. I think, Dubois was obviously not happy in Winnipeg. I mean, that could be said about a lot of players, but he wanted out. And just, I mean, dude, you're going from living in Manitoba to living in Los Angeles. I mean, you just hit the absolute jackpot. The only thing I'll say about the sign and trade is that it absolutely does handcuff the Kings a little bit going forward. Like, that money is going to be a problem at some point, whether you get a cup in the next 5 years or you don't, there's going to be people you want to bring in that you can't because you have this money on your payroll.
I will say, I almost feel like it's more of a problem like right now, though, than anything, because he's there for 8 years at that price. I think by the end of that, I mean, he's still what, 24 years old or 25, something like that.
Is he really? I thought he was like 26 or 7. I totally could be wrong, but
can we get a fact check? I'm pretty sure he's like 25 max.
He is 25 years old.
Okay.
And he's already turned 25. He turned 25 back on the 24th.
Okay.
So he just turned 25.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, that to me, like there's a world where you're at the end of that contract and he's still a solid producer for you and you don't absolutely hate that you're paying that, especially if by year 8, he may even be deserving of more, like.
Yeah. I don't know.
Did you guys did you see Vilardi's comments about leaving Los Angeles?
I did. I actually sent that to Morgan too. He said like let's just say because they were asking like, oh, does it suck to like leave Los Angeles for Winnipeg. And he was like, honestly, I'm kind of excited about it. Let's just say those folks back in Los Angeles, they're not the biggest hockey fans.
Which
It was something along
It's-
those lines.
You're
Yeah.
going to the complete opposite of that. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
yeah.
And he so I sent that to our boy Morgan. He just like sent back like the angry emoji or something.
Which like, and for those that don't know, Winnipeg, Manitoba, like winter is basically hockey season. It's
Yeah.
October to April.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
literally. Probably one of the worst places to live weather-wise in the world, I would say.
Oh yeah.
So that's not that fun. But Nick, I agree. I think like an A- for both. PLD is a strange one for me. He's a streaky guy. Like he had a good season, but I can't get that clip of him in that shift in Columbus with Torts as the coach out of my head where he literally looked like he was playing beer league. None of his stats, if you look at any of his individual seasons, are like glaringly like, holy shit. For $8.5 million, that's a hefty price.
It's the sandpaper
totally agree
though.
with you.
It's
It's
like
the
Yeah.
sandpaper.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I
It's the
almost feel like, I feel like maybe this isn't fair to say, but especially because I'm thinking again of like Torts. But I'm like, does the guy have an attitude problem or something like that? Because, which, first of all, I would have an attitude problem if John Tortorella was my coach. But I don't know, just like from the track record, I feel like there's been some times where I'm kind of like, stop being a little bitch and just like play hard, you know, like
Yeah. No, I get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I understand.
Also, shout out to the Montreal Canadiens who had to do everything they possibly could to get Dubois to come there and then backed out at the last minute.
I mean, honestly, I don't hate that for them. I don't know if I necessarily love this for LA. I might like it. We'll see how it pans out. But
I love the return for Winnipeg. I think Velarde
Yeah.
could absolutely be a top 6 top line stud there.
yeah.
Like
I
30
agree.
goals probably. And I would say 5 years maybe.
I still think I think Iafallo could easily be second or third line guy and get 20 goals. Or
And-
I think he was unhealthy off and on last season, so that was a little bit of an issue. But
With
if
him,
stays
it's sort
healthy-
of like what I say about Jordan Eberle or Anthony Cirelli. Like he only scores massive goals
Yeah.
in the playoffs.
Iafallo gives me like a Oshie light or like a diet Toffoli type vibe,
Yes.
like something like
Mhm.
that.
Very
Yeah.
much so.
I think that's a good comparison. Not going to go through all of these. I'm sure no one in the world here listening cares that Mackenzie Blackwood went to the Sharks. So we're going to glance over
I cried.
those kind of trades. This one, kind of a big one, not too much, but the Avalanche trade Alex Newhook to the Canadiens for 2 draft picks. So that's
First and a second.
yeah.
Which
Yeah.
Felt a little steep, but
Yeah, especially considering 31 and 37 plus a player on top of that. I figured if you're going to give up a first, you'd probably give up like a later second, somewhere in the 40s or 50s. But
Also,
feel
like 37 low key to me is still a first round pick.
yeah, I also
Yeah.
feel like Alex Newhook is good for like one like third round pick. Like that's what I
Yeah.
would have said he was worth, but fuck me.
We
what do I
definitely
know?
saw a little bit of, I don't know, do we want to call it hockey inflation at the draft with people
Yes.
trying to shed cap?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a weird ass year with the flat salary cap because like all players are just being given away for like
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah, there's a big one coming up that we're going to
Yeah.
talk about that
Yeah,
someone
let's
on this
talk about it.
podcast is very happy about.
The Philadelphia Flyers, they send Kevin Hayes to the St. Louis Blues for a 6th round pick in 2024 with 50% salary retained. That is like literally shipping something in a box and never getting a payment back for it. Like that's
So-
just wild.
This was my first Washington Capitals what are you doing moment of the pre-draft
Yeah, like
saga.
if we could have just had him for that same price, why didn't we?
Well, I'll give you a 3rd, 4th, and a 5th. Like, yeah, why
no,
not?
straight up.
Yeah.
Hayes is a gamer. I don't care.
And
if you
you're
had time
retaining
off year
half his
last year.
salary. Like, what am I
Yeah.
getting for
No,
him? Like
literally
a
give me him.
tin of chew and a half a bag of pucks. Like, come
I will
on.
say he makes a lot of
Seriously.
sense in St. Louis. I actually think it'll be a good fit.
Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think St. Louis, watch out for them this year. I'm not saying they're going to be cup winners, but I do think they're going to be a lot more dangerous than they were last year. Next up, the Bruins. They send Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno to the Chicago Blackhawks for Ian Mitchell and Alec Regula, I think.
yes.
Jackson, thoughts on this trade?
I absolutely love it, considering the Blackhawks only gave up 2 guys who they weren't going to bring back. Ian Mitchell, he needed a change of scenery. He feel like he kind of was like stagnating a little bit. He wasn't getting consistent ice time with the Blackhawks, so sent into somewhere where he may get a nice little shot on the bottom pair in Boston. And then great leadership with Nick Foligno, got him for 1 year at $4 million. I think that's a great contract. And then Taylor Hall is going to be the perfect line mate with Connor Bedard and just trying to mentor him as a former #1 overall pick.
Yeah.
Now, Hall's not going to go and win the Hart this year with Bedard next to him, but 60 to 70, maybe even 80 points this year out of Taylor Hall would be exceptional.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a great point, Jay. And especially with Taylor Hall, it's a guy that was so highly touted, came into a very, very bad Edmonton Oilers team and had a very similar draft to what Bedard has now. Everyone forgets that Hall and Eberle were drafted like, I think, first and maybe 14th. Don't come after me, Oilers fans, but, very similar to what Bedard and Oliver Moore were drafted. I think they're, it's someone that can absolutely help guide Connor Bedard at 17 years old in his first NHL season.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great trade for Chicago, and especially for the return. I mean, Jesus, that's a steal. Like Max said, we're seeing a lot of guys go for so cheap right now, and this trade probably highlights that better than anything. So next up, Nick's favorite player, Ryan Johansson of the Nashville Predators, goes to the Colorado Avalanche for the right to unrestricted free agent Alex Galchenyuk, 50% salary retained. Nick, what are your thoughts?
This is a home run deal for the Avs. I've kind of dumped on this guy like the entire time this podcast has been in existence, and that's just because the Predators have been in a nosedive ever since going to the Cup final against the Penguins, and this guy has basically just been invisible, in my opinion. But I think he's going to find every bit of what makes him a great NHL player in Colorado. I think it's absolutely going to be a home run fit. And the fact that they got him for 50% retained to a guy who's not even signed yet, it's just the rights to him, is just such a grand slam of a deal.
I think this is the second line center that they needed. Maybe not as good as Kadri was 2 seasons ago, but they tried to replace him with Newhook. It didn't really work like that. And as a result, you're seeing them get Johansson in the mix. I think he'll be a great second line center for them.
I also think this is a guy that you can park in front of the net on a second power play unit and just shoot around. I mean, he's got the size. I mean,
Big
he
boy.
can win faceoffs in the offensive zone. So I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll end up working well for Colorado. It's kind of hard for someone not to work out well in Colorado, which is why I'm also confused why Montreal paid so much for Newhook. Like, why?
Yeah, I don't get that either. It's also so like, I'm not even gonna say low risk. I'm just gonna say zero risk, high reward. They're not giving up shit like Galchenyuk. Like whatever, man.
Yeah,
cost them anything. It's like using a gift card to buy something on Amazon.
No, straight up. That's a great analogy.
Verbal meme, we need it.
Oh crap.
This next one, super pumped about this. Reigning Stanley Cup champion Riley Smith has been traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins in exchange for a 3rd round pick, which is going back to Vegas. That's the one they gave up to get Teddy Bluger earlier this season. Mr. Kyle Dubas, you have arrived.
Tell me how in the world Alex Newhook is worth a first, a second, and a player.
Thank you.
And Riley Smith is worth a 3rd round pick.
The other way around.
That they already fucking had like
difference between
a few months ago.
It's called American weed versus French weed, and they were smoking on the joint that time. That was
wow.
Yeah,
but I also gotta say this does feel like a mini salary dump for Vegas. They got so many guys with massive contracts, but I mean it's good for them. This is much better than the return they got for Marc-Andre Fleury and some of the other guys they've gotten rid of. So for them to even get a 3rd round pick for a big contributing player and a legend for them, I think it is huge, and I think Pittsburgh is actually gonna love this guy.
I will say when the Knights Twitter account tweeted the news, the replies from Knights fans were so funny.
They were great.
Almost every single one was just like, wait, what?
We have to lose players.
But it's like now you know the price you pay.
Yeah.
And also it's just I mean, I kind of have to give them a little bit of credit. They have like always had this mentality of no one on this roster is safe. And he's one of the original guys that we made such a big deal about, like getting the cup like second or third. And now see ya.
like, here you go.
Yeah.
Okay, goodbye. Yeah.
It's like, so if you could be out by Monday, that would be great.
A lot of Pens fans saying this could be the writing on the wall. Jason Zucker is going to hit free agency. I would imagine he probably will. Sucks to see him go, but I'm super pumped to have Riley Smith.
So what? That'll be fine. That's a fine trade-off.
Yeah, that experiment kind of went one way.
Yeah, good season, but he's always hurt. So yes. Ross Colton traded to the Avs in exchange for the 37th overall, going back to Tampa. Not a whole lot of hoopla on that. I mean, Ross Colton, decent player, had some big playoff goals. Probably a good third liner. Some
muscle for the Avs. I feel like maybe they didn't really have that when they played Tampa in the Cup final. You'd probably say Tampa had a little bit more of the hammer behind their players, but yeah, I think that's a good move.
Tampa also trades the rights to Corey Perry over to the Chicago Blackhawks for a 2024 7th round pick. No contract details yet for Perry, but the Hawks get another veteran winger. I think a guy who's going to help groom Bedard. So that'll be cool for them. And what better guy than the Worm, right? I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah. Crazy to think that like he's probably old enough to be Bedard's dad.
Yeah, he'd be very young because I think
Yeah.
Perry's like 38 now, but
still
considering all the time. Yeah, I was just
Perry
gonna say,
won a Mem Cup with former guest of the program, Robbie Schremp, the year that Bedard was born, 05.
That's crazy. Yeah. Doesn't that kind of put it in perspective? Sid and Ovi made their NHL debuts the year that Bedard was born.
Yeah, that's wild.
That is.
I hate everything.
That is sucks. That is strange. And the last trade we'll talk about, Tyler Toffoli, Nick alluded to this earlier, traded to the New Jersey Devils in exchange for Yegor Sharangovich and an 80th overall pick. I'm going to go ahead and say it. The New Jersey Devils are loaded. Absolutely loaded.
I think you texted us the other day saying they're the new Rangers. I low-key think they're the better version of the Rangers, just minus the goalie right now.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a better offensive team on paper going into this season than the Devils. Maybe you could argue the Oilers because, 97-29, but
yeah, no, they're nasty.
And they're kind of keeping that Devils identity that won them cups in what was it? 95, 90 something else, and then what, 2000 maybe?
Sure. Sounds
something
right.
yeah.
You're absolutely right though. They really are sticking to that Devils brand of hockey.
Yeah.
I love it for them. So that's a great trade. And then Sharangovich signs with the Flames, 2 years at 3.1 AAV.
Smart deal.
We'll move on to some extensions real quick. Milan Lucic back to Beantown, 1 year, $900K. I think that's their pitch to get Bergeron and Krejci to stay. Don't know. I mean, knowing Lucic and back in Boston, watch him have like a good year. But so that happened. And then Timo Meier signs an 8-year, 8.8 AAV extension with the Devils, the $70 million man. I love what Jersey's doing. Thoughts, comments on that? Overpay, not so much.
I think when you trade for a guy like this, like Timo Meier, I think you obviously have to pay him the big money. And we're just going to see that contracts are just going to keep being larger and larger for maybe guys who aren't as good, where like a few years ago, if you're paying someone 8.8 million, you're thinking this is for that time, like an Austin Matthews or Patrick Kane or something, but
that's a top line contract.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, Meier, great fit for New Jersey. So I think this is well worth it.
Yeah, spot on, Jackson. And all I would add to that is similar to what I said about the Pierre-Luc Dubois thing. The longer the tenure is in a situation like this one, the more it actually makes sense, because you're saving yourself from having to pay that inflation costs a couple of years down the road. That's going to be even higher, assuming he plays well through the contract and sticks around and all that.
I mean, it just makes that top six even better. Didn't have a great playoffs, but I'm sure once he's settled into Jersey, not going midseason, he'll definitely be better for them.
He got beat up too.
When he got laid out. I mean, he literally got borderline concussed, I would say, from Jacob Trouba. But yes, the Dallas Stars, they extend Dadonov 2 years, 2.25. The Leafs re-signed David Kampf 4 years, 2.5. And then Vegas extends Ivan Barbashev to a 5-year, $5 million AAV for a $25 million total. That's probably the reason they traded Riley Smith to Pitt. So they keep Barbashev, who had an unreal postseason. So good for the Knights. Let's move on to the discussion portion of this episode, which is presented by Kane Footwear, who I think Nick has a word from.
Well, like I said at the beginning of the show, I had to move my younger brother today. And while I was doing that, you guys know I was rocking Kane Footwear the whole time. I know I'm hurting right now, but had I been wearing any other shoe, I probably would basically be on a hospital gurney right now. Not only did I have my Kane Revives on, but I got a pair of the Kane Revive socks, which are absolutely incredible. They're padded on like the top of your feet, on like the back of your heel. They keep everything nice and constricted, so you feel comfortable. It feels like an athletic fit, but it was absolutely fantastic while I was moving stuff up and down, picking up heavy things, putting them down in different places. So head to the link in our bio today for the pair of the most comfortable shoes you will ever own.
For sure. Thank you, Kane, once again for sponsoring the discussion segment. I think the big question that everybody's asking, we slightly talked about Bedard earlier, but we'll throw this one out. And Jay, I definitely want to hear your opinion. Realistically, what can we expect from the Chicago Blackhawks as a team this season?
That's so tough right now because we still have to go through free agency, and right now the Blackhawks have nearly $25 million available to spend after some of the trades they've done.
That's good.
So honestly, it's tough to say. Obviously, they're not going to spend all of it. They're going to basically play it how the Bears have been playing it the past couple of years, where they're just going to ship out guys and start spending smartly. So I think they're going to add a goaltender. They'll still have, I think, was it Stalock still here? Or is it? Oh, no, it's Mrazek. Mrazek will still be here. They'll spend some money on a goalie. They drafted a ton of forwards, but they'll still sign more. They're not probably going to bring back Caleb Jones, so they'll have to sign some defensemen. So just getting some smart contracts, maybe 2, maybe 3-year deals, depending on the guy, just to build that roster around. I think the Blackhawks, they won't be the worst team or one of the worst teams in the league again, but they'll probably still miss the playoffs by, I think, like a solid, make 10 to 15 points, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair, unbiased assessment. So tip of the cap to you for that, Jackson. But all I would add is that obviously the biggest concern is goaltending right now. That's probably the number one thing they ought to go out and really take a hard look at, see who's available, see who they can get. I gotta say though, I'm pretty impressed with the start. It's a really, really good start to rebuilding this team and becoming competitive again quickly, like very quickly. The fact that we're talking about, I mean, how bad they were last year, and the fact that we're talking about right now that they probably will miss the playoffs, and like all of us are like, yeah, probably, but I don't think any of us are willing to say like 100% they will.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that alone, I think, speaks volumes about how well they've done at rebuilding this team so far.
I think they could, like Jay said, if they bring in a goaltender and maybe 1 to 2 more, solid B to A plus defensemen, we're probably looking at like what Detroit or Buffalo had this year in the East. Like you're probably anywhere between 5 to 10 points out of a playoff spot. And if they go crazy in free agency, I don't think it's all that crazy to think that they could sneak in somehow, especially in the West.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Totally.
I think they could be within a 10-point range. I think they could be like kind of what the Red Wings were this year, like one of those kind of teams, play spoiler against some good teams, maybe make a push at the end, but ultimately miss by a couple. Some names for free agency, just so everybody knows, because that's coming up here very shortly. Kane and Taves, we know they're not coming back. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Ryan O'Reilly, Tarasenko, JVR, John Klingberg, Pacioretty, Dumba, Jonathan Quick. Just trying to look at some other names. Thomas Tatar, Shane Goss to spare. I mean, there's definitely some names out there, so we'll see.
Tony D.
Tony D.
I could see Gostisbehere being like a cheap D that they pick up on like a 2-year deal or something like that.
I could see
Just
that.
just include the whole Coyotes roster because we know those two teams swap players.
They
like
love it.
middle
Oh my
schooler swap
God.
They
spit,
love it,
man.
dude.
Like, yeah.
They love it so much.
Evan Rodriguez. I think that would actually be a good one.
That would be a good fit,
He
definitely.
could easily get top 6 minutes there.
Connor Sherry, potentially.
Good middle six guy. I'd be down for
Yeah.
that. But I'd love
Just
to
saying.
see them steal away Dumba from the Wild. I think that'd be a great pair to put with Seth Jones.
I would agree. So yeah, let's see what the Blackhawks can do this season. We're going to end this episode with our trivia segment, as always, which is presented by our friends over at Elwood's Liquor and Tap, who I believe Mac has a word from.
Indeed. Support your local dive bar and have a beer at Elwood's Liquor and Tap, home of the Pizza Luge, located in the heart of downtown Milwaukee, right on Water Street. The 70s inspired bar has a little something for everyone. From daily happy hour, rotating taps, free birthday perks, and a 4-season patio, a good time is always right around the corner at Elwood's. They've also got the full NHL package, so be sure to head over there come October when the season is back. And you can bring your dog, too. It's a dog-friendly bar. So head on down to Elwood's, have a couple drinks, make some friends. We'll have a good time. All right, boys, this is a good trivia segment I've got here. I'm really excited about this one. The title of this particular trivia question is called A Crazy 23 Minutes. So we're talking about on this day in 2016, 23 minutes went by. And in that span of 23 minutes, 2 blockbuster trades and 1 huge signing occurred. Okay. Can anyone tell me what any of those 3 things are?
Me.
So,
Oh, God.
Nick, you can knock out one. I'll knock out one, and then we'll see if Jake can get the last one.
All right.
Trade, I have to go first. And
Okay.
it's the Subban Weber trade, right?
That's one of them. Yep.
Okay.
Oh,
So for
that
the,
was the second one. That
Okay.
was the second thing that happened. Like, right. So one crazy trade happened and everyone was like, oh my God. And then hold on, let's see. 20 minutes after that was the Subban Weber one. And then 3 minutes after that, the news broke about a big signing. For a
Oh, I
different team.
know all
So-
3 of
so-
these too.
Damn
so,
it.
so here's what I'll say to kind of help Jay out. I will do the signing
Okay.
because the trade that happened includes 1 player on your roster for the Chicago Blackhawks right now.
Good job, boys. You're right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
The extension was Steven Stamkos staying in Tampa Bay.
Yes,
Correct.
and that was a huge one. There, I don't know if you guys
Oh.
remember, but there was so much speculation about him going back to
Yes.
Toronto that year.
I think it
That's
was a
where he's-
bigger deal that he didn't go to Toronto
Yes.
versus re-signed in
Yes,
Tampa.
people were like losing their minds for like months about that, and finally he never even hit the free agent market because it was a couple days prior. But yeah, that was the last thing that happened. So what was the first big trade that broke that really shattered people's brains here?
and it's with a guy currently on the Blackhawks.
A newly appointed member of your team.
Was this a Corey Perry trade? Or
Nope.
No, that's a good guess, though. That's a good guess.
I will also say here, this might help you out, Jackson. So this player gets traded, and then his new team, in his second season with that new team, he won the Hart Trophy, scored a career high 39 goals, 93 points.
Oh my God.
And
Why am
his team did pretty damn well that year too.
They did.
And I would just remember this is a very, very new Blackhawk. Maybe not someone who's been on the roster a very long time.
Oh my God. Why am I not thinking of this?
like under a week.
Yeah.
under a
Yeah. We talked about it in
Taylor
this-
Hall.
Yep. There you go.
Oh my God.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. I was wondering when that would
The
click.
greatest NHL 1-for-1 trade of all time.
Yep. Taylor
Traded
Hall
for
for Adam Larson.
Yep.
Adam Larson,
From Edmonton, New Jersey. That's
Yep.
right.
Yes,
who
sir.
is now a member of the Seattle Kraken.
Mm-hmm.
Good one,
Good
Mac.
job,
I like
boys.
that.
Yeah.
That was
you guys know your
today.
shit. That was good.
That
Yep.
was June
Damn.
29th. Wow.
Yep.
All right, solid epi. Very news heavy. Obviously, we're at that time of the year. The next episode will probably be a free agency recap, so kind of the same thing. And then we'll have some fun stuff.
Don't forget to tune into the first annual Empty Betters Awards coming to you in about a week, give or take a couple days. We'll see.
Yeah, you'll know.
You'll know.
We'll make sure you don't miss it.
Yeah.
But,
when you see the red carpet getting rolled out, that's when you know.
There you go.
There you go.
Appreciate the love and support as always, everybody. Thank you. And without further ado,
Class dismissed.